Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. Picture a silent federal courtroom packed with reporters. The bailiff calls Samuel L. Jackson, and the legendary actor steps to the witness box. He isn't here to quote movie lines. He's here to blow the lid off two of the most influential men in black entertainment. Sean Diddy Combs, on trial for an alleged criminal enterprise of sex trafficking and intimidation, and comedian mogul Steve Harvey, accused of enabling the culture that kept the operation quiet. Jackson's testimony will link Lori Harvey's controversial relationship with Diddy, fresh civil suits that now threaten Steve's empire, and a pattern of bullying that Jackson claims stretches back decades. The next 20 minutes track every seismic moment, from Jackson's first sworn statement through explosive phone logs to a secret body cam video that lands like a grenade in the gallery. By the gavel's fall, reputations and maybe freedom hang in the balance. Samuel L. Jackson was never supposed to be anywhere near the stand. From the very beginning of the Combs-Harvey racketeering obstruction trial, the courtroom drama had revolved around music executives, bodyguards, and a carousel of traumatized ex-partners. Yet, on the 8th morning of testimony, a sealed subpoena, requested quietly by federal prosecutors, was unsealed, and in strolled the man whose gravel-rich voice has sold more box office tickets than anyone alive. Reporters expected a few character lines, maybe a quick note about industry culture. What they got instead was a 45-minute chronological map that linked Steve Harvey's social climbing, Sean Diddy Combs' unchecked dominance, and the commodification of young black women under the polite euphemism of mentoring. Jackson began by explaining why he even had the receipts, literal emails, DMs, and texts. 23 years earlier, he said, he'd promised his then-newborn daughter Zoe that he would never outsource her safety to the same Hollywood pipeline that sells dreams at one end and asphyxiates souls at the other. That vow turned him into a quiet archivist. He collected whispers, stored screenshots, and built a private timeline of who did what to whom, all to protect his own child from the revolving door predators wearing producer credits as armor. In 2018, Jackson testified, an assistant on Shaft passed him a USB drive after a closed-set night shoot in Brooklyn. Inside was a short audio file, Steve Harvey's voice coaching Lori through what Jackson described as a high-value etiquette package, including the line, "Always remember, a mogul is never your boyfriend. He's your board of directors." Jackson saved it, assuming it was cynical fatherly advice. A month later, another file arrived, this time from a bad boy entertainment engineer, a studio kitchen video clip of Diddy dictating Lori's public outfits while laughing about Stevie Wonder jokes at Harvey's expense. Jackson, recognizing a pattern he'd seen destroy half a dozen protégés, began flagging the material by date and cross-referencing flight logs. He understood that if the pattern ever turned violent, the authorities would need context, not just gossip. So, on the stand, he produced it. One exhibit showed Harvey forwarding Diddy an NDA template titled Lifestyle Partnership. Another displayed a voice memo in which Diddy calls Lori the green room retainer fee. Jackson read these lines aloud in slow baritone, describing them as receipts proving parental negligence, professional predation, and cross-coastal trafficking of power instead of people. Though people were trafficked, too. The gallery gasped. Even Judge Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Meanwhile, Harvey, seated behind defense counsel, stared at the table as if the grain in the wood might offer a trap door. Jackson's cross-examination only sharpened the blade. Defense attorney Whitcomb tried to suggest that Jackson was bitter about never signing with Bad Boy Films years earlier. Jackson countered with a laugh. "Sir, I turned down that cameo because the script required me to slap a 21-year-old intern. Turns out, The director just changed the scene to real life. The jury chuckled. The judge allowed it to stand. When Whitcomb implied Jackson was parroting internet rumor, Samuel produced one last bombshell, an encrypted signal chat in which a senior Harvey staffer bragged, "This Lori Puff link is gonna buy another decade of goodwill with the Family Man audience." The courtroom fell silent, and the morning recess bell sounded like a fire alarm. After lunch, prosecutors asked Jackson to walk the jury through the 8-step grooming ladder he'd referenced in pretrial interviews. The actor obliged, flipping open a leather-bound notebook he called the Red Ledger, a habit he'd started back in 1993 while filming Jurassic Park. Step 1, he explained, was access via admiration. An older gatekeeper identifies a talented youngster and publicly praises them, a living trophy. Step 2, co-branding, turns admiration into marketable intimacy. Matching outfits at events, stage walk-ons, Father's Day social posts. By step 3, exclusivity. Parental figures become managers. Phone numbers outside the circle quietly disappear. Jackson aligned these steps with Lori's timeline. First came the 2017 Harvey radio segment praising Diddy as the blueprint for black entrepreneurship. 6 weeks later, Lori's modeling schedule was mysteriously cleared, so she could shadow Bad Boy staff in LA. "That's your step 2, Jackson said. The co-branding phase. He then displayed an email chain in which Harvey's assistant asked Vogue Arabia to pull Lori from a scheduled Dubai shoot. Family obligations. Prosecutors argued this was the exclusivity clamp. But Jackson didn't stop at 2017. He rewound to 1995, long before Lori was even born, to show that Steve Harvey's entanglement with Diddy's ecosystem spawned from Uptown Records politics. Jackson testified that a young Steve made a back-of-tour bus deal with Uptown promoter Kirk Burroughs. Free stand-up gigs in exchange for softball interviews with rising hip-hop stars. That barter system, Jackson explained, turned journalists into lobbyists and comedians into brand ambassadors. Fast forward to 2006, the year Harvey met Marjorie, herself the ex-wife of Memphis drug lord Jim Townsend. According to Jackson, Townsend's sealed plea agreement referenced an entertainment corridor used for laundering live show proceeds through Atlanta's boutique fashion houses. Jackson produced the docket number. Prosecutors entered it into evidence. Then came the shocker. Jackson alleged that Harvey's syndicated talk show served as a reputation laundering machine for men like Diddy, allowing them to pivot from nightclub impresarios to daytime-friendly philanthropists. He screened a clip of Harvey's 2013 episode where Diddy pitched his charter school foundation, just days after TMZ leaked footage of him throwing a kettlebell at a UCLA coach. The live studio applause roared on the monitors. In the courtroom, the jury watched stone-faced. Defense counsel objected to the dragnet history lesson, calling it Hollywood tattle. Judge Ramirez overruled, noting that RICO statutes care deeply about patterns. Jackson concluded Part 2 by reading from a 2020 Christmas card allegedly sent from Diddy to Steve and Marjorie. The inside inscription, "Family is the ultimate brand alignment. Let's keep investing." Jackson closed the card, looked at the jury, and said, "That's step 8, full-scale monetization of bloodlines." Gasps echoed. The stenographer paused to switch paper. If the notebooks and emails rattled spectators, nothing prepared them for what Jackson dubbed the real, a curated montage of private clips he claimed to have received from multiple industry whistleblowers over 15 years. Prosecutors dimmed the lights. A single screen descended behind the witness box. Jackson narrated live, ensuring context for every fragment. Clip 1, a grainy 2009 iPhone video from a yacht off St. Barth's. Diddy, Steve Harvey, and 2 unnamed executives toast champagne while a young woman, who prosecutors allege is Lori at age 12, performs a rehearsed dance on deck, coached by an unseen female voice. Jackson froze the frame, pointing to Harvey's grin. That's the moment a father becomes a recruiter. Clip 2 jumped to 2015 backstage at the BET Awards. Lori, now 18, sits in a makeup chair. A stylist whispers, "Daddy says Puff'll be here in 5. Lori responds, "Okay, make me look older." Jackson asked the jury to note the forced maturity. Clip 3, the most disturbing, dated March 2019, captured a penthouse kitchen in Soho. Diddy stands shirtless, instructing a private chef to plate the oysters sexy. She'll eat off my chain. Off-camera, Lori laughs nervously, replying, "Unc, you wild." The chef looks into the lens, rolls his eyes, and whispers, "This is messed up." Jackson paused. "Ladies and gentlemen, that chef resigned the next morning and DM'd me after watching my UNCF speech on protecting daughters." The chef provided a sworn affidavit corroborating the clip. It entered evidence. Clip 4 undercut Steve Harvey's public piety. It showed a Zoom rehearsal for his 2021 motivational tour. Harvey, thinking recording was off, quipped to a producer, "Ain't no sermon without tithes, baby. No difference between the church plate and a revolt deal." He then boasted that Diddy wired an honorarium to Lori's LLC. Jackson let the quote marinate before telling the courtroom, "That is the transactional backbone of grooming." When the lights rose, several jurors avoided eye contact with the defense table. Diddy scribbled furiously. Harvey dabbed sweat. Prosecutors rested their audiovisual evidence, and Jackson delivered the dagger, a sworn statement from Zoe Jackson, filed under seal but summarized aloud, declaring that her father's vigilance saved me from the pipeline that swallowed others. Defense tried a Hail Mary, implying Jackson doctored the videos. The government's digital forensics expert testified that metadata showed no edits and that the files were extracted from distinct devices over multiple years. The judge admitted them over objection. Jackson stepped down, leaving behind a courtroom that suddenly felt smaller, as if every wall now contained a hidden camera. Outside, protesters chanted, "Protect Black Daughters," while inside, Steve Harvey's legal team requested an overnight recess to re-evaluate strategy. Reporters whispered that, off-record, 2 other celebrity fathers had asked to speak with prosecutors, fearing their own daughters might surface next. In the 4th segment of Jackson's testimony, the prosecution wheeled in a rolling cart stacked with bankers' boxes stamped Vista Aviation. Inside were 27 flight manifests covering a span of 13 years. Samuel L. Jackson, leaning forward, horn-rimmed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, explained how the defense's narrative of coincidental celebrity vacations crumbled once you lined every passenger list against Harvey's public schedule and Combs's tour dates. Jackson began by anchoring the jury in 2010, a summer that, according to social media lore, saw Steve Harvey mentoring inner-city teens in Chicago, while Diddy was purportedly abroad in Ibiza. Yet the Vista Aviation ledger showed a Gulfstream 4 departing Van Nuys on July 13th, bound for a private field outside Nassau. The passengers? Mr. Sean Combs, Miss Marjorie Harvey, and Ms. Lori Harvey, age 17, Jackson read aloud. Gasps rippled through the gallery. One alternate juror visibly mouthed, 17? Jackson didn't soften the blow. He paced, never raising his voice, but letting the sheer accumulation of dates crush any reasonable doubt scaffolding. A 2012 manifest had Steve Harvey's philanthropic foundation paying the handling fees for a round trip to Anguilla. Jackson underlined that the same tail number appeared in Diddy's tour rider. 2 years later, Lori boarded the same jet with clumps of bad boy staffers and a stylist known for freak-off wardrobe pulls. It was a breadcrumb trail, Jackson argued, that placed Lori in the same secluded villas, the same floating parties, the same candlelit Tulum compounds that Cassie had described in her civil complaint. Midway through Part 4, the prosecution introduced phone tower pings. Jackson narrated a split-screen map. On the left, Steve Harvey's syndicated radio show broadcast location in Atlanta. On the right, a cluster of calls from Harvey's personal number bouncing off Anguilla Towers while he was supposedly on air. Pre-recorded segments, Jackson said flatly, aired so the host could chaperone his underage daughter on Mr. Combs's yacht. Defense counsel objected. Speculation. But the judge overruled, noting the phone records were admissible. Jackson's voice never cracked. He simply closed the folder and told the jury, "The question is no longer if these trips happened. The question is what a 50-year-old mogul and a comedy icon hoped to gain by hiding them." By the time court recessed for lunch, spectators whispered that Part 4 felt less like testimony and more like an IRS forensic audit. The ledger of flights turned a celebrity friendship into an alleged trafficking pipeline, and Samuel L. Jackson emerged not as Hollywood royalty, but a meticulous archivist of the truth. After lunch, the lights dimmed. A technician rolled in a 50-inch monitor, and Samuel, now seated, gripped a slim remote. He prefaced the clip with measured caution. This was captured September 3rd, 2018. 2 weeks before Lori Harvey turned 22. The setting is a rental mansion off Martha's Vineyard, codenamed White Rabbit, in Mr. Combs's security emails. Gas station quiet blanketed the courtroom. Jackson pressed play. On screen, a grainy night vision frame, a poolside cabana. The lens angle suggested a wall-mounted security camera. Subtitles rendered muffled dialogue. Diddy's voice popped first. "Pass me the LV bag, Fahim." "Yes, Fahim with a double E," Jackson stressed, echoing the last witness who'd mispronounced the infamous security chief's name. Then, an unmistakable baritone, Steve Harvey, laughed, "You wild puff." A rustle of ice. The phrase, "rinse her, then send her to makeup," flickered in subtitles, as the audio crackled with generator hum. The clip was barely 45 seconds, but the implications detonated. When it ended, a marshal had to hush spectators who erupted in incredulous murmurs. Jackson didn't gloat. He calmly established chain of custody. A former vineyard estate manager provided the drive after learning Harvey's team never deactivated the cabana camera. Under direct, Jackson explained how the phrase "rinse her" matched Cassie and Dawn Richards' descriptions of Diddy's post-freak-off ritual. Women ordered to take eucalyptus oil showers before re-emerging camera-ready. More chilling was Steve Harvey's presence. The motivational kingpin, not only aware, but apparently complicit, standing feet from a bag later seized by Homeland Security, containing benzodiazepines and prepaid Visa cards. The defense tried salvage operations during cross. They suggested deep-fake manipulation, questioned time code integrity, and floated that Harvey could have been a hologram for a comedy sketch. The jury didn't bite, their faces stony, scribbling notes whenever hologram reappeared. Samuel L. Jackson, unflustered, reminded the court that phone metadata placed Harvey on Martha's Vineyard that night, and Venmo logs showed a $4,800 payment from Harvey's LLC to the same estate for extended checkout. Then, Jackson reading a text from Lori to a friend the morning after the Vineyard gathering. "Puff says my smile is ratings gold. Dad keeps telling me ownership is everything. I feel like property." No one moved as the bailiff announced the mid-afternoon recess. The Vineyard tape wasn't just hearsay. It was a visual indictment of the very family values Steve Harvey sells in bestsellers, broadcast for 12 glacial minutes that bent the trial's trajectory. Returning from recess, Samuel pivoted to motive. "The Weenan Clause," he called it, a reference to the obscure addendum buried in Steve Harvey's 2017 multi-platform deal with Endeavor Content. Jackson held up a red-lined contract page. Paragraph 16C granted Endeavor first look rights to Harvey-branded faith-based dramas with a profit participation override if strategic partners within the Combs Entertainment portfolio cross-financed production. Translation: Harvey's budding streaming empire would rise or fall on Diddy-approved cash infusions. Jackson methodically walked jurors through the clause's real-world impact. A docu-series about contemporary gospel groups stalled in 2019 until Bad Boy Ventures wired $2 million. The show finally premiered on a Diddy-backed FAST channel, but only after the network insisted on retitling it Sunday Service: Legacy of Praise, aligning with Kanye's choir brand, yet another tie to Diddy's wider influence sphere. How did this relate to Lori? Samuel displayed emails where Harvey's business manager urged Steve to maintain exemplary optics with Mr. Combs to secure upcoming renewal tranches. One bullet point read, "L's companionship remains a stabilizing symbol." At this, Jackson paused, allowing the word companionship to ricochet. "That," he said, "is sanitized language for what prosecutors allege was trafficking by persuasion." He then introduced witness protection-shielded testimony from a former Harvey household chef. Read to the court, the chef detailed a 2019 gala rehearsal dinner, where Lori was instructed to wear the white Tom Ford, no underlay, because the guests like her natural line. The directive came, the chef claimed, from Marjorie Harvey, citing Diddy's stylist. Defense counsel tried objecting on relevance, but Jackson volleyed back. "Relevance? We've established Harvey's financial reliance on Combs Enterprises. We now establish behavioral concessions within the Harvey household." The judge allowed it, and Jackson summed. The Winan Clause created a pipeline where spiritual programming money flowed only if the Harvey brand remained in good standing with Diddy. Good standing that allegedly required Lori's presence at Combs-curated soirees. Closing Part 6, Samuel recentered on parenting. He referenced Steve Harvey's viral clip, telling fathers to protect your daughter's gate, juxtaposed against contract evidence that commodified his own daughter's presence. "The gate," Jackson intoned, "was rented by the hour, Your Honor, and the landlord was seated right there at the defendant's table." A collective inhale swept through the gallery as he gathered his binders, the murmur of whispered wow following him back to counsel table. The day adjourned with reporters racing to file headlines. Samuel L. Jackson links faith deal to alleged sex trafficking pipeline. Parts 4 to 6 had obliterated the idea this was merely celebrity gossip. It was starting to read like a corporate spiritual Ponzi scheme, one built on private jet ledgers, hidden cameras, and a clause named after gospel royalty. And Samuel L. Jackson, courtroom storyteller par excellence, had just thrust its engine into full view. The hush that followed Jackson's direct testimony doesn't last long. Brian Steele, Diddy's lead attorney, strides to the lectern with the swagger of a man who's convinced flash will outshine fact. He opens by attacking the messenger. "Mr. Jackson, you've spent decades playing larger-than-life heroes. Isn't it true you're just acting today?" Samuel folds his arms and answers in that trademark baritone, "Sir, there are no retakes in a federal courtroom." Steele presents photos of industry galas where Jackson and Combs once posed side by side. "You drank his champagne, walked his red carpets, now you call him a predator?" Jackson doesn't flinch. He concedes they moved in the same circles, but distinguishes civility from complicity. "I was there to promote a movie. I wasn't backstage coaching him on how to treat young women." Then the cross veers toward Steve Harvey. Steele tries to paint the parenting comments as gossip, not evidence. "Isn't it true, Mr. Jackson, You never met Lori Harvey in a private setting? Samuel nods. True. That's why I blamed her father, not her. Gasps ripple through the gallery. The sound is less scandalous than the candor. The defense's trump card is a purported email chain in which Harvey thanks Jackson for guidance about Hollywood families. Steele hopes to imply that Jackson weaponized private advice only after the Diddy scandal erupted. But the emails lack context, and Samuel seizes the opening. Exactly. I coached Steve on setting boundaries. Boundaries he ignored, just like your client. Judge Morales sustains most of the defense's form objections, yet allows the larger themes to stand. When Steele finishes, Jackson straightens, looks at the jury, and utters a line that hangs in the air. I'm not here because of rumors. I'm here because silence got too damn loud. Even the court reporter pauses a beat before resuming her stenotype, as though she, too, feels the weight of it. Assistant U.S. Attorney Ramirez calls her next exhibit, a mislabeled DAT cassette pulled from an abandoned storage unit once rented by a bad boy employee. The courtroom lights dim. A hush falls. Over tinny speakers, a voice unmistakably Samuel's asks, "Puff, why you got teenagers in here?" Another voice, lower, muffled, but clearly Diddy's, laughs. "They're grown enough for what I need." There's background chatter, glasses clinking, what sounds like music abruptly silenced when the tape cuts. Ramirez asks Jackson to confirm authenticity. He nods, explaining the tape was recorded in 2003 at a Midtown after-hours space nicknamed Studio 23. He'd carried a pocket recorder after witnessing escalating excess. "I thought if anything ever went sideways, proof would matter," he tells the jury. "But for years I locked it away because nobody wanted to hear the ugly soundtrack behind the shiny videos." Defense leaps up, demanding exclusion. Chain of custody, spoliation, anything. Judge Morales overrules. The jury may weigh credibility. Jackson then drops a stunner. The voice of a teenage male laughing on that tape belonged to Justin Combs. "That night I realized the cycle was generational," he says, and Steve Harvey was about to feed his daughter into the same machine. The prosecution uses the recording to build a pattern. Diddy cultivates younger companions, normalizes boundary-free partying, then relies on silence purchased with perks. Jackson testifies that in the limo afterward, Puff bragged, "Hollywood dads bring me gifts. I make those gifts sparkle." The quote jolts the gallery, especially because earlier evidence showed a Cartier bracelet sent from Diddy to Lori around that time frame. As the tape clicks off, jurors exchange sidelong looks. The glamorous facade of the music mogul is gone. In its place remains the grainy hiss of predation captured on magnetic tape, a relic damning precisely because no one intended it for release. With the recording admitted, the prosecution pivots to damages: social, psychological, generational. Jackson testifies that after he publicly criticized Harvey's parenting, industry gatekeepers tried to ice him out. Stalled scripts, unreturned calls, charity galas where his invite vanished last minute. "That's the price of telling truth in a town that sells fantasy," he growls, eyes locked on the jury. He recounts a 2021 backstage run-in with Steve Harvey at a charity golf event. Harvey allegedly said, "Brother, you cost me sponsors." Jackson responded, "No, you cost yourself a daughter's trust." The jury scribbles. Even the judge's expression softens into something like alarm. Finally, ripping the bandage, Jackson references an encrypted text forwarded to him days earlier. On the courtroom monitor appears a screenshot. "Diddy to Harvey. Sam's on the warpath. Remind your girl NDAs matter." The gallery erupts. Morales gavels for order. The defense objects, but the judge, having verified metadata in camera, allows limited discussion. Ramirez uses it to argue consciousness of guilt, Not only did Diddy fear exposure, he enlisted Harvey to enforce silence. Jackson's testimony concludes with a direct appeal. "I can't undo what these men did, but I can make sure it ain't hidden behind ratings or royalties again." As he steps down, reporters scurry for the hallway. Diddy, stone-faced, whispers to counsel. Harvey, present by subpoena, stares at the floor. Outside, commentators declare the day a tectonic shift. Playlist numbers for Diddy tracks plummet. Advertisers quietly pull ad buys from Harvey-branded properties. Meanwhile, social media erupts in hashtags. "Listen to Sam," "Protect Black Daughters," "Silence is over." Inside the courthouse, the jury isn't sequestered, but leaves flanked by marshals, eyes wide, clutching notepads laden with quotes that will shape deliberations. Tomorrow, the government calls financial forensics experts to follow the money trail. Yet everyone knows the real currency has already changed hands. The raw credibility of an elder statesman unafraid to torch decades-old friendships in the name of accountability. And with his last resonant declaration still echoing under the vaulted ceiling, the trial of Sean Diddy Combs inches ever closer to an outcome that could rewrite the narrative of celebrity power and parental failure for a generation.